Okay, my dear friends, I need a favor from you today. And it's not anything that's going to cost you money, and it's really very simple and easy to do. And it might be the blessing that someone is looking for. I just need you to like, to comment, or to share this video. And it's so simple. All you have to do in the comment section is just thank you. It really helps us with the algorithms of the YouTube. It means we get seen by a lot more people. So post a comment. If you have a prayer request or a question, you can post that as well. I'll be sure to answer them. It will help us and it will help the world out greatly. Thank you. You are a blessing to us and to the world. And until we see each other again, God bless us all. So let's begin our service with a reading and an affirmative prayer. Today I'm reading again from my book, Whispers of Heaven. And in it I wrote, "Today, have faith that you are loved by God and that you are right where you need to be. And right where you are is all the blessings, intelligence, wisdom, and creativity of that which set the universe into motion." So let's put these words of wisdom to work in our lives. We're going to do it through affirmative prayer. As I say these words, take them in for yourself. If I say something that works for you, hold tight to that. If I say something that doesn't work for you, well, just let that part slide by. But just know this truth with me today. There's but one God, one mind, one power, and that power is divine intelligence. It's perfect love. And that power created me out of itself so that I could walk the soil of this earth knowing something good and powerful for myself. That right where I am flows all the love, the joy, and the possibilities of spirit. So here today, I lift my eyes to a better knowing for myself. I lift my eyes to see how I can envision and incorporate all the love God had in mind when it spoke me into creation. This is my truth. I celebrate this right knowing, and I release this prayer into the mind of God to do its good and perfect, bold and dynamic work, returning to me multiplied abundantly. And together we say, and so it is. My talk title today is Greater Love. In Scripture, it says that even if we spoke with the tongues of angels, if we did not have charity and love in our heart, it would sound like the clanging of cymbals, or perhaps my singing. You can take your pick. Our founder, Dr. Holmes, he wrote that love is more than a sentiment. It's a need. It's a thirst. It's natural. We need to have someone or something in our lives that we can love, we can take care of, and we can nurture. If we do, it will give us a will to keep going on, to have a purpose, so that we can go through this experiencing we're having now of having one crisis break upon our shores after another. Now, we don't want to get into self-sacrifice. No martyrs, please. But to do this in a joyful way, to do it in a way because it makes us feel better. I was listening to an interview for a senior citizen that lives in one of the large senior communities here in St. Augustine. And the reporter asked him, "Aren't you scared of the COVID?" And he said, "I'm not scared of it at all." He says, "But that doesn't mean that I don't want to be safe, because I don't want my wife of many years to have to go through the experience of not having me now when she needs me. I don't want my son and daughter having to explain to my grandchildren where I'm going. So I'm not scared, but I'm certainly doing the best I can so that I can remain in the lives of those people who've learned to need and trust me." When we move out into love, we open ourselves up to channels of God's possibilities. This week I heard another story on the History Channel. It was really a fascinating story. It's about the last man, the very last man that stepped off the Titanic. He happened to be the French chef, bakery chef on the Titanic. You know, the Titanic was full of very wealthy people, and they were used to having their French pastries. And so the ship had hired the very best French chef they could find to cook the little French pastries. He was in bed already because a bakery chef has to get up early in the morning, and he heard the ship hit the iceberg. And he said the moment he heard that collision, he knew the ship was going down. And so he thought, what is it that I can do? What can I do now with what I have? And so what he did is he went to his kitchen, he collected all the bakery items that he had cooked the day before, and he went along the life rafts, and he was giving the loaves out. And he was telling people, you're going to need this food before you're rescued. I love that idea. I talk about this a lot. He used what he had right in front of him, his bakery items, to create a miracle, to provide people a little bit of comfort for this huge challenge that was facing them. Now, at a certain point, one of the captains came up to him and they said, you have a seat on one of the life raft, and that life raft can't take off until you're in that seat. So he gets to the life raft. They push him up to the very edge of the boat. He said he looked around, and behind him was a young woman with her baby. And he said he thought to himself, not me. I'm not going on that boat. And so he's told him, he says, take this young woman, get her baby, put her in my seat. When they lowered the boat down, he knew what was in front of him. And so he went back to his kitchen. He knew he had a bottle of brandy in his supplies, and he took a couple of hits from it. I told you he was a man after my own heart. And he's illustrated in all the movies of the Titanic, the one that they've done over the years, there's always a drunken chef. Well, he was that drunken chef. And so he managed to get to the very tip of the boat as it was going down. And he was the last person on the rail as it went underwater. And they said it looked like that he just stepped off from the ship into the water. He managed not to get his shoulders or his head wet, and he survived there for 2 hours. For 2 hours in that frigid water. They say that most people, the moment they went into those cold waters, suffered shock. Most of them survived much less than 20 minutes. But for 2 hours, he survived. And when he was saved and rescued, they pulled him out, they got him to a doctor, and they said his only damage was his feet. They could tell that his feet were suffering a little bit of damage. But that was it. And he went on to live a healthy and productive life. Now, it became sort of a myth for the Titanic of how did he survive? And some people said that he survived because he had had the alcohol. Others said that he had survived because he had created the miracle. Now, we know in truth that the alcohol did not help him at all. In fact, that would have caused his body to lose the heat even quicker. It had to be a miracle. He had opened his heart, and he had stepped into a zone of the miraculous. Viktor Frankl, one of my favorite authors, he wrote Man's Search for Meaning, and he had gone through a horrible experience in his life. And he said, if you will find a reason to live, a purpose, a mission, he said, life will provide you a way to live. When we step out into love, we step into the zone of the miraculous. And in that zone, we can't imagine all the great good that we can bring into our lives. Because it's not a function of getting love. It's entirely a matter of giving love. The more love you get, the more love you will receive. Now, it may not be quite from the source that you're thinking about, but love will show up. And if you're open and receptive to it, it will be greater than you have even imagined. Now, I know in our culture, we focus so much on romantic love, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's just one way that God can get you the love you desire. I always like the old skit that Carol Burnett did with Harvey Korman. It was where she played Snow White and Harvey was Prince Charming. 20 years later, Prince Charming had packed on a lot of weight and he was no longer that charming. We want to be open to as much love as we can allow to show in our lives. Dr. Holmes said anybody who thinks they can get through life and be happy without love doesn't know what they're talking about. Love is the beginning, it's the end. It's the alpha, it's the omega. It is that nature and impulse in nature that will not be denied, no matter how you struggle with it. Now, in my life, I had two really wise teachers. Both of them were people who people sought counsel from. They were kind of tough and no-nonsense type of people. They could cut through a lot of confusion and really get to the heart of the situation. One was my spiritual teacher, Kennedy Schultz, and the other was my mother. They both, in a lot of ways, were, I said, similar to blue cheese dressing. You can love blue cheese dressing a lot, but if you ever get a little too much of it, it'll put you off for quite some time. They were great people to seek counsel from, but not necessarily so easy to live with. And as I said, both of them had deathbed conversions. Deathbed conversions. Kennedy, on his deathbed, he said that he had been all wrong with his ministry. That if he had to do it all over again, he would only focus on love. That was the only thing that was of importance. And you have to realize his ministry was amazing. He ministered to thousands of people. He taught in the rich auditorium, Symphony Hall of Atlanta. He filled it up twice. During the worst of the AIDS epidemic, the fire marshal came in and made them clear out space because people were sitting in the aisles to hear what he had to say. Because there was no other church in Atlanta you could have gone to if you were gay and you had AIDS, that they would have welcomed you in their doors. So he had a huge ministry, but he said it was all wrong. My mother, she again was a very tough, smart, wise. She would have made a brilliant lawyer. And at the end of her life, it was almost like something out of Hollywood. My siblings were there. We were taking round-the-clock care for her. We were doing everything we could to make her as comfortable as she could be. I remember one night we had stayed up really late, talking among ourselves, as you often do when there's a sick person in the house. And we heard her rustling. And so we were soon there, and we were asking her what she wanted. She mentioned that she thought she might like a popsicle. So we sent my youngest sister off to the kitchen to get her a popsicle. It seemed to be taking for a while, so I went in there to see what was going on. I heard the microwave go off, and I was, "What are you doing?" And she says, "Well, I've put the popsicle in the microwave, tried to make it a little bit softer for her." I was like, the microwave melts the popsicle. It doesn't make it softer. But we were all doing what we could to let this person know we cared for her. And as she drifted from this life to the next, all she could say is, "I want you to know, I love you." She couldn't say it enough. Dr. Holmes says the key to joyous living is love. He went on to say that the whole of life is spirit giving itself as itself in love. When we give love, we are channels of supporting creation. It's what we've been called to do. Now in Scripture it says that as we give, so shall we receive. We've kind of gotten that jumbled up a little bit. We give and then we wait to see what we're receiving. But you know the truth of the matter is that when you give, you get immediately. And the first thing you get is the good feeling. The good feeling that you've done something good and right and that you're helping people. Now we have large institutions that have for a long, long time thrived on guilt. Guilt is one of the best fundraisers that's ever been invented. And these institutions don't want us to feel good, frankly, about anything we do. And this has been a source of a lot of turmoil in our lives. Because when we can't feel good about some part of our lives, then we get angry and mad at someone we don't know who we think is enjoying life. No, feel good about what you're doing in the world. It's the first sign from Spirit that you're doing something right, that you're doing something purposeful. And then don't try to solve the whole problem for yourself. That's God's work to do. Do what you can to help, and then do not burden the person you're trying to help with pity. That doesn't do them any good. But do the work you can, and then let Spirit take over and do the rest. And put your life to work, seeing how much good you can bring to your life. And you will marvel at how Spirit shows up, because it will show up in some really fascinating and amazing ways. I have a friend of mine, and she went through a medical procedure a month or two ago. And it was Saturday evening when she called me. She needed some duct tape. And I thought we had some in the garage. We didn't. So it meant that I had to go by Ace Hardware to get her a roll of duct tape. It was getting late in the night, and I was happy to see that Ace was still open. As I was talking to her, she was telling me that the procedure had left her nauseated, and she was drinking ginger ale in the hope that the ginger would help settle her stomach. I didn't say anything to her, but after I hung up, I remembered talking to a friend who had also gone through a procedure, and she had told me that ginger candy was really the best thing she found for helping her nausea. Now, frankly, I don't know if I've ever seen ginger candy before. It's not between the Three Musketeers or the Milky Way, so I don't even know if I certainly have never tasted it. So I go into Ace Hardware store, I get the duct tape, I'm back in line, safety distancing from everybody else, waiting on the cash register. And when I'm waiting there, I notice beside me, this Ace Hardware has shelving right at the checkout, and it's full of all kinds of things you can't even imagine. It's got candles, it's got a Swiss Army knife that will convert into a camper. I mean, it's all kinds of stuff. And of course, a lot of food items. I was looking, and one of the items was deer corn. I had never seen deer corn before. I didn't know deer did corn. And then I was realizing all the different flavors they had. They had deer corn pickle flavor, deer corn jalapeno flavor. So I was just amazed at all of this. In front of me, the guy was getting ready to pack up and to leave. He had made his purchase. As he was leaving the aisle, he turned around and he looked at a band that normally you'll find potato chips on. It's one of those long bands, and they stick the bags on. This one was empty except for one bag. And as he went to leave, he reached around and he thumped that bag. He didn't take the bag, he thumped the bag. And when I got up to the line and looked at what he had thumped, it was the last bag of ginger candy. Now, what was that? That was nothing more than God supporting my impulse for love. That's all it was. God supporting my impulse. And we can attract that support in our lives. That home says we do it when we surround ourselves by love. Now, a good exercise that you can do this week, I know many of you are not going to want to hear this. It's going to sound as attractive as a visit to the dentist office. But a good exercise this week is to take time and envision this coming election, November, and envision love being the outcome of whatever decision we make. Because when we're willing to use our imagination, even if it doesn't seem to be realistic, we're opening doors of possibilities. And one impulse of love can change the world. I saw another biography on the History Channel, and it was for Olga Romanov. She was the sister of the last Tsar of Russia. This was right before World War I. Now, if you don't know much about the Romanovs, they were the wealthiest people that probably have ever lived in the world. Their clothes were encrusted with precious jewels. She had grown up in the lap of luxury. They said that she was related to 10 royal houses of Europe. So she had never known want or never had any kind of experience of need. When World War I came along, the Russians were dug in on their frontiers, and the regular soldiers were suffering horribly. They didn't even have any kind of hospitalization organized. And when she heard how they were suffering, she stripped off those bejeweled robes she had, and she got into her nurse's outfit. She went to that horrible place of front line of death and destruction, of fleas and all kinds of terrible things that she had never even imagined. And there she served, she helped, she mended. She opened her heart, and love poured out. When we open our hearts, love can bloom and blossom in our ways. Dr. Holmes says, we are afraid of our greatness because we are so tied to our littleness. He said, we clutch the littleness anxiously, jealously, so precariously to our heart. He said, but it's essential to speed beyond the little to that which is larger. Now, none of us are perfect. So the challenge is to be great enough to rise in love and charity and understanding and compassion, because this is what Spirit is calling on us to do. And you will never be happy or satisfied with your life. You will never feel like you have stepped up and been the person God has called you to be until you step up and be that loving, miraculous person that is a channel, is an outlet for the love of God in your life and throughout the world. And you never know the great good you're doing. Spirit prayed for you to come into this world. Spirit is amazed and awed at your ability to be loving and joyful and kind. And now is the moment. You're the person, and this is the time. It's the truth in your life. It's the truth in mine, and so it is.
This thing called love, well I can't handle it. This thing called love, must get around to it. I ain't ready. Crazy little thing called love. This thing called love, well it cries at a cradle at night. It swings, it drives, shake it all over like a jellyfish. I kinda like it. Crazy little thing called love. There goes my baby. She knows how to rock and roll. She drives me crazy. She give me hot, cold fever, leave me in a cuckoo sweat. You gotta be cool, relax, get hip, get on my track and take the backseat, hitchhike. Shake her all over like a jellyfish. I kinda like it. Crazy little thing called love. Crazy little thing called love. Crazy little thing called love.
So let's end our service with an affirmative prayer. And just know this truth with me today. There's but one God, one mind, one power, and that power has created me out of itself so that I can experience all the goodness and joy and love it had in mind when it prayed me into existence. So here today, I cast aside every idea of lack and limitation. Here today, I expand my vision of how more love can rain down upon my life. Here today, I see God as me, with me, and for me, flowing out, radiating back to me only the best that life has to offer. This is what God had in mind when it created me, and today it is what I am sharing with myself and all of those that I'm in contact with. My truth, I celebrate this right knowing, and I release this prayer into the mind of God to do its good and perfect, bold and dynamic work, returning to me multiplied abundantly. And together we say, and so it is. All right, my friends, know this truth with me. Your life is not a problem to be solved. It's a miracle unfolding. Your job this week is to go name your miracle, to proclaim your miracle, and to make it your own. God bless us all. Now let us go be the miracle God has called us to be. Until we see each other again, this is Reverend Ken. Many blessings.